first time you met André?
Oh my God. Well, I'd seen him on TV, but he's just, I mean, TV doesn't do him justice. So you're up standing within, say, 6 feet of him. He's just massive. His head is massive. He's a nice guy. And when he's not drinking, and his body it just keeps going. And when you get up and then you look at your arm, you go, and then you look at his arm, massive difference. I remember one time he was in Chattanooga. I was in a battle royal with him, which I made it a point to kind of stay away from him but some kid pissed him off. He hit this kid so hard with a chop. He come across like this and hit him. He never touched the ropes on the way out, or didn't seem to. He knocked him completely through the ropes to the floor. I thought he was dead. I really did. And then I made a point to kind of get out of that ring. I think I eliminated myself, to you. I left because I didn't want him to hit me like that. But his hand is, to hold a beer in his hand, but you couldn't even see the beer can sometimes.
Did you ever hang out with him socially?
No, never did. Because I don't think a lot of guys did that I know. Maybe they may have done when he was in New York, but I don't think he had a social circle that hung around him that much. I knew him professionally, and that's as close as I got.
Who was his handler? Because he always seems to have a handler taking him.
I remember the name. I can't remember it now, but he did have an old-time wrestler who used to...
not Frenchie Martin, Frenchie Bernard? That rings a bell.
No, he was I think he was a French Angel, I think.
Oh, damn, I can't remember.
But I can't remember either, but you would recognize the name. But this guy was in charge of getting him from town to town and getting him in the hotel room, getting him food, and driving him around. That's what their job was. So, and he couldn't just have just a regular car. I mean, if he got in the biggest car they had, he'd still be tight in there.
First time meeting André the Giant and first time partying with André the Giant.
Oh, geez. I met André when he came in. He used to come in all the time during a special time in AWA. It was towards the fall, and they'd always have a battle royal. And then the winner would, wind up wrestling Nick Bockwinkel as the champion, and it was always André. So André and I got along great. I'll tell you a quick story about André. And this is about his drinking. I was commissioned to drive him from Peoria, Illinois to Moline. It's 100 miles because his girlfriend was flying in from California, whatever. So Wally Carbo told me to get a Cadillac, make sure that he was comfortable, and away we went. So after the matches, we stopped at a liquor store and he got 2 6-packs of Budweiser. So I'm driving down the road and he's got to meet her. I don't know. I think she gets in 11:30 and it was probably 10 o'clock. We're driving down the road. I'm going pretty fast. I'm going 72 miles an hour, 75. All of a sudden, I'm driving down the road and I see this cop turn his lights on. He comes across the median and he stops me, pulls me over. And he said, "Do you know why I stopped you?" And I said, I'm probably speeding. And I said, I have to get this gentleman to the airport by 11. He's got a special plane that he's got to catch to New York. So he's got his flashlight and he sees André in the front seat and he sees he sees a big bag and he says, "What's in the bag?" And André looks at me and goes, "Beer." And the cop says, "What?" And he says, "Beer." And so he says, "Get out of the car." So he gets out of the car and the cop looks at him, he's going, "Oh my God." And then he grabs the bag and he sees there's 7 bottles gone out of a 12-pack. 7 bottles. We've only gone 10 miles. And he said to Andre, he said, "Did you drink all that beer?" And Andre said, "Yes." And so he looks at me and he said, "Did you have any?" I said, "No." I said, "I'm drinking a Pepsi." And I showed him a Pepsi. So he says, "Okay, open your trunk." He says, so we put the beer in the trunk. We're driving still 65 miles an hour to get to Peoria. So finally we go 20 some miles or so. And Andre says, "Jimmy." And I said, "Yes." He says, "Pull over." I says, "What for?" He says, "I want the rest of the beer." But here he had drank 7 bottles of beer in about 10 miles. I mean, that's 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, and he just, boom, boom, and the cop couldn't believe it. Andre was a lovable guy, and I got along great with him. It's just impossible to be a giant. He was such a loving and kind person,
How often did he need a piss?
He could hold pretty much, but he also had some hellacious, what would we call, farts. He had some incredible farts that last 20, 25 seconds. And he'd go, "Whoa," afterwards, and everybody started to vacate it. But here's another quick story. He had been very good to me. I loved him very much. And we were up in Winnipeg in very similar situation, big battle royal, blah, blah, blah. And so there was a place called Chez André, and it was a French restaurant. So I said, "I'm going to take Andre for lunch there." So I take him for lunch, and they have a special. They had this pork cutlet, and it was like $6.99. So I thought, shit, no problem. So we go in, and the waiter comes in. He says, "What would you like to drink?" So Andre says he had some Remy Martin cognac, a couple shots, and then I had a Pepsi. So then we ordered the pork cutlet, and then he ordered a bottle of wine. So I get the bill, it was $125. So here, these 2 orders of $6.99 turned into $125. So I said to Andre, "Andre, next time we go out to dinner, I buy the food, you buy the booze." And he said, "Okay, boss."
I was asking you about Lucy International, but was that the first place you met Andre the Giant, or did you meet him way before that promotion was around?
Actually, I met Andre the Giant before that, because my father and my uncle, they owned the territory here in Quebec, Canada. And they were running the whole province. They were running the Montreal Forum, which is an institution for the National Hockey League, the Montreal Canadiens. And the Paul Sauvé Arena every Monday night was like our church for us. We'd go to the wrestling Monday night. And I met Andre the Giant when I was about, I must have been maybe 6, 7 years old. And I'm 61 now, so it's been quite a bit there, maybe 55 years ago. And Andre the Giant was such an impressive guy. I have so many stories on him. I don't know where to start.
Was he Jean Ferrer at the time when he first came
Exactly.
in? Yeah.
Exactly. Jean Ferrer. And he'd come from France. He was living in Paris, I believe. And yeah, well, an amazing man. But as I grew up knowing Andre from different eras, because the era of my father and my uncle was, I'm talking about the early 70s. And then came the Lutte Internationale that you're talking about, is in the early 80s. So we're talking about 10 years later. And there was a different approach, because he always liked my uncle and my father because they booked them, so they were good friends. So he always kind of took care of me a little bit. He always looked after me as his little cousin from Quebec. And but we grew into a nice relationship, him and I, during the years that when I left, when I was doing Lutte Internationale here in Montreal, I was doing between the 77 all the way to 85. Those 7 years I did, or 8 years I did, was for Dino Bravo, Rick Martel, and Gino Brito, and those guys that were running the business with Andre the Giant, who owned part of the business. And but I was doing a lot of during the winter. I was doing a lot of traveling in small territories around the world. I'd go to Mexico. I went to Mexico in 78. I went to Kansas City, 79. Nick Goulis in Nashville in 80. And I went to Atlanta, Georgia in 81 by TBS, which was a Turner Broadcast System at the time, was one of the biggest. And every small territory that I do when I was gone from Montreal during the wintertime, They would always fly Andre the Giant in as a main event, a special main event in those small territories. So I'd meet him again, once in a while. And then that's where I started playing cribbage. I don't know if you know the game crib.
I can play crib, but that was actually my next question. Did he teach you how to play cribbage?
I taught him. No,
did you?
No. It's my mom who taught me how to play crib. My mom was a good crib player, but Andre at the beginning used to whip my butt quite a bit. He was an excellent crib player. But when you play with the best all the time, you get good. And I was a quick learner and a good learner. So I end up at the end there, we'd always play for some small money, some small change, like $10, $20 in the evening. But before the matches, when we were sitting in the dressing room, and we were really battling out at the end. But the best part of all that for me was not playing crib with Andre. I love playing crib with Andre. But the best part was on these long flights that we had to do. Like sometimes we had a 4, 5, 6 hour flight. And I was always sitting with most of the boys. I was sitting in economy class, but he was sitting in first class all the time because he was too big. And actually he was sitting in first class, and the seat beside him was always empty because his elbow and his arm was almost halfway through the seat right beside him. So every time we'd go to take off, it was so funny because all the boys would be in the back, and then the flight attendant would come by and say, "Is Jacques Rougeau here somewhere?" And I'd say, "Yeah, that's me." And they say, "Your ass up front." So I'd be flying first class the whole time, when he was on the trip. So I was always hoping he was on my show.
Did he catch any heat for getting in the first class seats from the other guys?
I'd say I picked up a little heat there. Yeah, but but it wasn't because I was going to play up in first class that I had some heat. It was my arrogance when I was going up there. That's where I got the heat.
Oh dear! I tell you, I can't ask Andre questions, and they're all going to be the obvious ones. But I'm hoping you've got some stories. The most you ever saw Andre drink in one sitting?
Oh my God, that's it's funny because we were leaving in the morning, like sometimes at 7 a.m. to fly to the next town, the next country, and Andre was already drinking. Andre must have been drinking almost 24 hours a day. But we got to understand something here. A lot of people, they point at him, and they criticize him for that. But let me put you in context. 24 hours a day, Hulk Hogan is sitting in an airport, and people come up to ask him for a signature. And he was always nice. Hulk was always nice to everybody. No matter how tired he was, no matter what time it was, he would always make someone happy by doing an autograph. But when it came to Andre, the people didn't always come up to an autograph for him. The people would come close to him and they'd go like, "Look at that. Look at him. Look at that monster. So eventually he became very unhappy with that situation. And there were some people that were obnoxious and some people that were really rude. And some people, sometimes they were idiots. I remember one time I was in a restaurant bar after a show one time. We went to eat, and I swear, as much as Gino Brito will tell you the story, but it was in Val d'Or up north in Quebec, and there was this guy that he was half drunk, and he just came up to him. He had 2-3 of his buddies with him, and he wanted to show that he was tough or that he wasn't afraid, and he just provoked Andre, and Andre just turned around and he exploded on and he went to grab the guy, and the guy started running outside the club. And when he got outdoors the club, Andre followed him. So all the guys followed him too. And when he got outside, these guys, there was 3 guys, I believe, they got into a Beetle. Those Volkswagens?
Yeah, of
Beetles?
course, yeah.
And like chitty bang bang, but you don't know that, you're too old.
I've got that on DVD. I love that film. Yeah.
So he went and he took the car and he flipped it on its top, completely flipped the car over, and the guys were in the car. And that's a story that I'll never forget because I never saw it happen. I was in the bar when it happened, and when Andre went out, the guys went out. I didn't follow, and I don't know what the reason was for, but when I came back, Gino was saying, "Jesus Christ, he flipped the car over. He flipped the car over." And another thing, I seen him do that time, which is amazing. I don't think I'll ever see another man do that on this earth. He took the battery of a car battery, and he picked it up with one hand, he just showed me with one hand he could pick up a battery. And, I have a hard time with my two hands, but so he had this amazing strength. He was this amazing guy who was sour of being a freak. And when people would come up to him, not always nice to him, then I've seen the other side of André, where sometimes I was so embarrassed and I felt so bad because sometimes it was nice people that would come up to him, but at the wrong time. And then they'd come up to him. He wasn't feeling good. And I seen André just turn around and look at a person, a normal person, and say, fuck off, and then I go like, holy shit, like, André, you can't do that. You can't say that. We were playing crib, and stuff like that. And I felt embarrassed. But knowing all the dirty looks and the freak looks and everything that he was looked at, the way he was looked at, I understand him. I may have got tired of it too. And so it was a situation that was, I think he was at the end of his days. He was very sad when his father passed away. His father passed away. I believe he passed away not long after that.
Yeah, he was at the funeral in France, wasn't he? And then André died like maybe a couple of weeks later, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was a very unhappy man. I think André was happy when he was sitting with me and when we were playing crib. André really, and when he wasn't sitting with me playing crib, he was sitting with Arnold Skolin, the agent that was in there. We were the two guys that would play with André day in and day out, every time we met. So he was a good friend of mine. I loved André. He was always good to me.
Was André, because as you say, people came up and pointed him and made him feel bad and everything, but he did get quite a lot of attention from the ladies as well, didn't he?
I couldn't tell you that. I couldn't tell you that. After my crib games, I didn't follow him, but I'll tell you, to be honest with you, I'm surprised you're telling me that because you're probably going to teach me something, because the only thing I know about girls is I saw one picture one time where André the Giant had two girls on each arm, sitting on each arm for a promotional picture. Like he had four girls in his arms, like two on each side. But that was for a promotional picture. I've never seen André's girlfriend. I never seen him go out with a girl. I never seen him date a girl. So you're and I didn't see him date a man either. Now I'm just saying, I just never seen his.
The loudest eater.
André the Giant.
Oh,
yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wasn't just a wildest eater. I mean, just if you ever went out to eat with him, you'd understand what I'm talking about. He just don't order number 7. He orders 12 for number 7, and 6 and number 8, and and drink quarts of wine while he's eating. And if you go eat with him, you might as well be ready. Your ass is going to sit there for an hour and a half while he eats. I'm serious. Not a messy, but just wild to watch him eat. How much he could put in his body. I watched. At night sometimes he'd drink 100 beers. Sometimes out party, just drinking. But to look at him, a beer can was about like this in his hand. You hear me? A big long neck. It was. But André would be my choice. Not to be nasty, but to eat so much and order so much at one time, it'll blow your mind.
I'd never forgive myself if I didn't ask you this as well. Did you ever go out drinking with André the Giant?
Yes, I did. When I first started in LA, especially, we'd go to Original Joe's in San Jose, right across from the arena, and he bought Crown Royals for everybody, 4 at a time, and pay for the steaks, pay for everything. I've been out with André a few times, yeah, and it was always a blur. A lot of fun. Because there's always a crowd and always attention, but it was very much a mind eraser.
Yeah. I take it if it's a mind eraser, you won't know maybe his record numbers that you saw him put down.
I've seen no. I wasn't counting at that time. I wasn't counting anything. I don't think any of us were. We just know there was never an empty glass. I mean, you finished one, you had another, and sometimes, my God, you look around and it was a sea of. Crown Royal. So, yeah.
You weren't on WrestleMania 3, were you? You weren't on the card.
I was not on WrestleMania 3, but I had two very important things to do in WrestleMania 3. Would you like to hear the second one first or the first one second?
The first one second.
Okay, I did this poem to help promote the show. In this world of wrestling giants, one man puts them all to shame, and he's every bit as rugged as the Alps from where he came. The French-born André Roussimoff's no stranger to our shore, but we call him André the Giant, and he's every inch and more. And millions stand in line to see God's mightiest creation, who's been called the greatest athlete of any generation. But he's never had a title shot, and we know very well Hulk Hogan's got a broken heart, and Andre's mad as hell. What will be the Hulk's reply? We'll have to wait and see. Till then, we're counting down the days till WrestleMania 3. So I wrote that poem to help promote, and that was my job as the poet laureate of the World Wrestling Federation. And then they used me in NBC to get blood in the Battle Royal. Did you ever know about this?
No.
Okay, if you go on my website, geniuslannypoffo.com, and then go into videos, you'll see a Battle Royal, and Andre headbutts me, throws me over the top rope, and I'm bleeding like all that blood. And then, which is something I did for Andre the Giant to help make him a more vicious heel, because he was a babyface for all those years. And now they just turned him heel by putting him with Bobby Heenan. But they wanted to show I was the sacrificial lamb with the blood. So what did I get for it? Nothing. Not for the poem, not for the blood. And when I got, they were big on, please do this, please do that. Everybody said, please, 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 please. And even Dick Ebersol says, bleed well for us, Lanny. We've never had blood on NBC. And I said, don't worry, I'm the man. And then I go to the back and I'm trying to stop the bleeding because I went too hard and I couldn't stop the bleeding. But the only people that were my friends were Rene Goulet, Rick Martel, Macho Man Randy Savage, and myself trying to stop the bleeding. They were just walking all over me, back and forth. Nobody cared about me. Nobody gave a damn about me. And then when they made the card for WrestleMania 3, yours truly wasn't on the card. And I never got like a bonus check for getting all that blood. Nothing, and no fucking thank you. So now, as I retire in Ecuador and I've got all this free time, the best food, everything, the beach and everything, I think it wasn't worth it. Of course it was. But it makes me think of all the times I met a girl, had my way with her and didn't call her. Now I know how that feels.
Everyone has an Andre. Well, that is an Andre the Giant story, but a personal Andre the Giant story, everybody has at least one. When did you first meet him, I suppose? Was it in the WWF? Because obviously he wouldn't have come to ICW.
Well, I actually wrestled him in 1975 when I was wrestling for the Sheik. And it was Andre the Giant and Bobo Brunzell against Angelo and Lanny Poffo. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. That was me. And Andre was very, very nice. And then I ran into him again in Amarillo when I was working for the Funks. Boy, did I love doing that. I love Dorian and Terry Funk and Herman Guest, who's passed away. And I can tell you the best story I have for Andre is, Lanny, come to my room. And he says, he gives me the menu of the room service. Anything you want. He said, what kind of wine do you like? I said, well, I always have red wine because it cleans the platelets in your arteries. And I can tell myself that when I'm cleaning the platelets when I'm having too much. Probably hurting my kidney and liver, but it's one off, one for the other. And then he gets a videotape and he puts in The Princess Bride. And he said, Lanny, what did you think of my performance? I said, Andre, it sucked. You were horrible. You suck. Now, do you think I said that? Of course I didn't. Andre, it was fantastic. You were great. And then I must have been in his room 6 or 7 times. I can't remember. And I couldn't say no to him. He would always feed me again, and then I would drink the wine, and he would play the movie again and ask me what I thought. And I was getting kind of bored with it, but I couldn't say no to Andre. Could you? I didn't have the balls to say no to Andre, so instead I hid from him. And he finally said, Lanny, where have you been? I've been looking for you. Oh my God, I got to go back and watch the movie again. And but I'll tell you what, I mean, he paid for everything, but there's always a price for free lunch, free dinners.
I was watching the film every single time.
Well, it was a hell of a movie. I mean, but I would have enjoyed it more if I was in it.
You could have been, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Yes, there you go.
This first time you met Andre the Giant.
I was young. I was really young. I was in Vancouver, and he just come to North America, and Don Leo Jonathan's home was Vancouver, British Columbia, Vancouver, and he'd come to have meetings with Leo, and he was around the Vancouver wrestling, so he was green, I was green, and both like, two ships in the night, sailing nowhere to go. So I became friends with him then real early in my first, and then as time went by, we would pass. And then finally in New York, he became a fixture out of WWE, WWF back in those days. He stopped, didn't travel anymore. It was just too much. Well, then WWE traveling is insane. But he would just stay out of one territory because WWE was basically turning it to one territory, the whole North America. So it wasn't that much of a reach for him going to, and Vince Senior was booking him. So him going to Florida or Georgia, Carolinas or something was out of the realm because he was now working for the WWF.
You must remember the first time you saw him drinking more than maybe an entire football team could probably drink. What's the most you ever saw him do in one sitting?
I don't know, but so we came back. We're in a plane coming back from Miami one night. We had a Lone Star. It's kind of a little hour plus flight. I remember he bought like 2 or 3 6-packs of the half quart beers, the 16 ounces. And before we landed, he finished that. And I about like the 2 12-packs. I gave him another 6-pack that I'd had with me, and he killed that. Then we got in the car and went to the Imperial Room, or wherever it was, a place at that time that you got back from after the wrestling matches. But I wasn't in on any of those 120 bottle beer nights or anything like that. But I was with him. I was in the back of the bus with him in Japan, and had a lot of fun with him.
Oh goodness! Did you ever actually travel on a plane with Andre to Japan?
Oh, many times. Yeah, he was on the. He traveled the circuit with us in the WWF towards the end there when he and we were in Europe together. He was on the European tour and yeah, we were together quite a bit. It was as he got older, he was a good real, but as he got older, the back and the pain and everything started to wear on him, and the travel and it's hard. No, can't find a bed that's not comfortable, or and his back was causing him. He was sore from the growth, and his back had hurt him.
Yeah. Was he a bit of a closet ladies' man on the road? Because you wouldn't think it to look at him.
There's no closet about it, brother. He was out there. He had ladies all over the place. He had first he had in Hawaii here. He had I remember Curtis. Oh, yes, he had a big Tongan girlfriend that had hair. That's when he had the afro, And Curtis he would blow up the story that she's about 6'5" and they got the hair. They both got their hair sticking out the hair. They looked like two trees walking down the street. But yeah, he had there. Then he had later on he had another girlfriend from San Francisco, and we were out with John told us, and the Giant and the girl placed this Nick's Fish Market, which is quite a classy place back a long time ago. And he and the girlfriend, so we're on the plane next day, and Tolis is always cracking up. No, Giant's girlfriend gave birth to a 9-pound tongue. And Andre would laugh and everything else. Then the next trip, she brought her family over. And that was it to meet Andre, and that was the end of their dating scene.
I also realised I shouldn't have used the word closet with ladies' man. It just doesn't seem to ever go together, those two, two terms. I don't suppose you ever saw Andre kick some serious ass at any point when he was tested in the bar or something.
One time I was in the rings a bunch of times, but of course we weren't sitting with him. He was sitting. I was a heel, and he was with Skolin and that crew, babyfaces. But I think it was Bradford Hotel in Boston where we used to stay for the matches. And we usually go up there on a loop, Bradford, up in Portland, Maine, or 2 or 3 towns up in way up in the northeast corridor of the U.S. So they were sitting there. It was an afternoon, and it was real close to the rugged part of town. So a big Native American guy, big Indian guy, comes out and I want you. Yeah, go away. Just leave. No, come on. So eventually, Andre stood up, and one of the guys just, he slapped the guy. And the guy the guy was just obnoxious, just going out. It was over the top. So he slapped the guy. And the guy flew in the air about 5 feet, and before he even hit the ground, his legs started running. He started running to get out of there. But that's aside from the other few guys that he just mauled in the ring, playfully, like the Iron Sheik or Bam Bam. I never saw him lose his. He didn't lose his temper there. He just, gently pawed a guy like a bear, and he flew in there. But I'm sure, he could have done a lot of damage.
Yeah, I've heard. God, I can't remember who was the recipient of it, but he used to do a thing where he used to sit down on someone, and on one person he just went and just cut like the biggest fart possible on them.
Yeah, I read that. Some Sheik, I think. Yeah.
The last man standing at the bar.
Andre the Giant. And after Andre, American Dream could put down some alcohol too. And those big guys, those big guys, I was 210, 15 pounder, and I'm standing there drinking these guys 285 plus, We had some serious ass drinker. Manny Fernandez was another one. I wasn't a big, huge giant guy, but Manny could put down some alcohol. And Manny, my only trouble with Manny put down that alcohol, he would get a little feisty, want to test his manlyhood out. So,
last man standing at the bar.
Without a doubt, Andre the Giant.
Oh, there you go then.
Yeah, Andre the Giant. And I tell you who else could put him away. I've never been so drunk in my life as the night that I spent drinking with Billy Two Rivers. My God, he could put it away.
Because you mentioned Andre the Giant, have you got a fun first time meeting Andre story?
First time I ever met Andre, it wasn't Andre, he was wrestling as Jean Fair. Not 7'4", 7'5", or like whatever it is. He's actually 6'11". That's how tall he was. But he's got the biggest hands and feet I've ever seen. First time I met him was in St. Albans, just outside London. We're both on the same card. I'm sitting down next to the door, and Andre, or Jean, fair as he was then, was sitting opposite me. No, sorry, he was sitting next to the door and I was sitting opposite him. He was sitting right next to the door. So we're chatting away and everything like that. And he takes his shoes off, you know, his walking out shoes, and he puts them down by the side of his seat. Just as he put his shoes down, Prince Kamali stepped into the ring. Now, Prince Kamali was what, 6'4", 6'5", big black guy with big hands, big feet. He stepped straight into Andre's shoes with his own walking shoes on. And he was kicking him about like herring boxers.
Did Andre ever wrestle in Britain before the WWF, of course?
Oh, yeah, of course he did. The Shan Fair.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was a good friend of mine over there.
What years did he wrestle in England?
It's when I knew you first, actually. So that would have been
69,
70, something like that.
How come he didn't stay? Because, I mean, wherever he went, he was a huge draw. So why did he leave France and UK so quickly for North America? Just more money?
More money.
His last man standing at the bar.
Andre the Giant.
Good man. Do you know, this is probably a good time because I've already written this somewhere else. Andre the Giant, do you remember the first time you met him?
Yes, sir, I most certainly do. Andre was a good friend of mine. I started wrestling in Tennessee. Well, everybody was based out of Nashville because we do Memphis was this way and Louisville was that way. So most of the guys in the territory lived in Nashville. So anyway, I was going to tell you a quick story to get to that. Jerry Jarrett brought me into business. I started in Tupelo, Mississippi, and then so I started making the loop. So I hadn't been working 6 months probably, and I just bought that. I seen all them driving them Lincolns and Cadillacs. And I said, "Oh yeah, baby!" But first car I had was old 73 LTD. And then I bought me that 76 Oldsmobile Regency. It was long like a Cadillac, but it wasn't a Cadillac. But anyway, Andre was wrestling in Louisville, Kentucky. And so they asked me, would I give Andre a ride back to Nashville? And how can I? Nobody liked to take him because they said he broke their seats, And so I said, I don't care if he rides with me or not. And so anyway, so the match over, and he had just got here too, so he didn't speak little English. He had a translator, Frenchie, with him. And he was at the hotel because they'd had a long flight or something. So me and Andre get in my Regency. Well, we go over the Holiday Inn, and it's got like a little horseshoe drive, but it's got a little concrete curb sitting up on it. And that Regency a little longer than what I was used to. I wheeled that thing in. And on Andre's side, the tires run up on the curb. That car went, oh, boom, yeah, boom. And of course, with as heavy as he was, it come down hard. I was holding that steering wheel. I thought, oh, God, I hope he don't slap me. I hope he don't slap me. But he said, I am. So we get Frenchie, though, and this is the most stands out in my mind about it. I mean, Andre was as good a guy. I mean, I never met as nice a person as him. And I hate, it's one thing he wrestled. He was a freak of nature, but just people are cruel sometimes. They say shit that they shouldn't even be said, and because he was just the nicest man I ever met. So anyway, we get Frenchie, and he said, beer. He knew beer and balls. Beer balls. And back then, I wasn't but 18. I said, and I drank like them little 7-ounce Millers, the little 8-packs of them. I said, yeah, I'll take an 8-pack of them little Pony Millers, right? So him and Frenchie go in. I stayed in the car. When they come out, they both got 2 big boxes with them. They bought me 6 8-packs of beer. I said, no. I said, we won't never make home. Give me an 8-pack, put the rest in the trunk. But Andre had bought him a case of quart bottle beer. So it was like his hand holding that quart looked like me holding that 7. I mean, he was just a huge man. My wife, his ring would fit on 3 of her fingers. You know Rick Martell?
Of course, yeah.
Well, so after all of that, I went to Atlanta. Well, me and Rick teamed up in Atlanta as tag team. We won the belts, as a matter of fact. But anyway, anytime Andre come in, we was who he wanted to go with. Of course, Ricky knew him, French Canadian, and I took him in Louisville, and so he liked me. I don't know how, we didn't have much conversation, but anyway, he liked me, I guess. Because anytime he come in, he wanted us. And we would hate for it. I mean, we'd love to see him, but we'd hate for him to come. Because as soon as the matches was over, it was bar time. and he could drink, but what would happen, he wouldn't really egg you on, but, you drink. Make me one of them. See, anyway, one night, it was a Sunday night at the Army. During the week, everything closed at 3. On Sunday, it closed at 12. Well, me and Ricky Bob, we hugging each other, said, man, 12 o'clock, if we can just hang on to then, we ain't going to be sick or nothing. And so anyway, 12 o'clock hit, and Andre come up, and he said, no, we went up to him and said, you ready to go, boss? He said, yeah. He said, maybe we go after hours bar down here. And I lived in Atlanta for a year and a half, too. You didn't have nothing about no after hours bar now. Andre come in and out of here, and he knew where everything in the world was. So here we go. And like we ran the Omni that night. We always supposed to dress nice, for the Omni. So that day, I went and bought me $150, like a pantsuit, back powder blue, thought I slick. So anyway, we say, yeah, we'll go down there with you. So we get to the bar down there, and I walk up the bar, me and Ricky with him. He said, what do you want to drink? And I drink, every now and then I drink some vodka and grapefruit, and that was a bad night to do it. But anyway, the guy, he made me one, I just turned it up and killed it. I said, fuck Andre. I said, there ain't nothing in that drink. He said, he's a bartender. And say that's the dumbest thing I can say. Because the next time wasn't no grapefruit in it. So I still had to drink it anyway. So at 3 o'clock, but when you come in the door, there was a bench this way and a bench this way. So we went in. And I hadn't seen Ricky in a while. I didn't know where he was. But about 3 o'clock, they started cooking breakfast. And I was tore up. You know how food smells sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, they was cooking bacon. All the people ordered bacon and all that stuff. I was sitting there, I said, So I jumped up and I run to the bathroom. Well, they had the little pee thing, and then they had the stall. The stall was locked. Somebody was in there. So I went right to the latrine, man. I'm all like, all of a sudden, I hear somebody in there doing the same damn thing. Come to find out, it was Ricky Martell. He was in there sick. He done got sick too. So we went out. I was laying on one of them benches, and Ricky was laying on the other one. Andre, he's sitting there and ate his breakfast and everything. And people was coming in. They'd say, look, there's Tommy Rich and Rick Martell. so finally, Andre comes out. He picks Ricky up in one arm and me in the other. And I didn't even know he could drive. Ricky had a 73 LT Thunderbird, 73 Thunderbird then. And anyway, he put Ricky in the passenger. I got in the back, Ricky got in the passenger side. And of course, I don't know how he drove, but he did. So, but anyway, as we're going back, I done throwed up all I could. But you know how you get them dry heaves? Mm-hmm. Well, on that 73 Thunderbird, it don't have nothing but a little smoke window. it didn't open about that far, so you couldn't get your head out. So I had to take my new $150 suit jacket, and I was dry heaving in it. Yeah, I was sick as a dog. Got up the next day. I was going to take it and clean it. I said, throwed it in the trash. I was mad. I was mad at Andre. I said, son of a gun, he gets us every single time.
That's the problem when he's always picking up the tab as well, isn't it? When somebody else is picking up the tab, the drinks go down quicker.
Yeah. Oh, but he wouldn't make you drink, but he'd make you feel like you needed to drink.
Yeah.
Come on, boss. And you say, okay. But hell, he could drink probably, ain't no telling how much Andre could drink on a good day when he wanted to.
Man, he would beat 2 or 3 of us at one time, and it's so easy, man. It just he's so strong. Andre's like a bear, brother. He could, if he wanted to, he could just backhand you, and like a bear, boom, man, you'd land up over the top rope in the 3rd row, brother. But it's all good, man.
Can you remember the first time you met André the Giant, and did you ever hang out with him socially?
Oh yeah, man. We all did. Andre, he was really I understood English and talked English. I spoke English. I can't talk. I can't even speak English. But better than everybody thought, and understood very well. And although Vince would always send in the French Canadians from Montreal. I mean, always, so many. Patterson talked French to him. Goulet talked French to him, and he always had French. But even the midget, Frenchy Lamont, he'd come in, man, and then they brought in someone to be with them all the time that take care of him from Montreal, and they talked French, and he liked and because he was really from France. But Montreal, they speak French, and the Vachons, all that French, Tarzan Tyler, they all came from there, and they all talked French to Andre, so they kept French people around him. But he talked to all the boys. First time I met him, I guess Bruiser had him, it wasn't Andre the Giant, they called him something else then when he first came
like
over.
Jean Ferrer, something like that.
Yes, brother, yeah. So I met him right off the bat, and of course then it was, he was having a lot more trouble, but he learned fast. He was sharp, and they said, Andre, you're going to be lucky to live to be, 45, 50 years old. And they really, they shouldn't have told him that, because boy, he lived, brother, he lived the fastest life I've ever seen, and eat and drink. Brother, I know you've heard so many stories on how much beer he can drink, and he drank the big long neck things, and I mean the bottles, the long real beer bottles, not these little short ones. And he'd take his the biggest hands, and you couldn't even see nothing on it. And he'd go like this and drinking, and it's a beer. You can't even see the beer bottle in his hand. And it looked like he's sucking his thumb or something, man. But he would put it in the boxes, and oh man, he'd drink a case of beer if we was going on the trip, man. On the way to the show, and you wouldn't even know he's drinking. He could and eat. Oh my goodness! And so he really lived his life, and he could have made it. I think he was 46. I don't know. I think he was when he died. God bless him. But if he would have, like you said, if you get so old, he said, well, if I knew I was going to live this old, I would take better care of myself, But he did. If he would have, he might have made it, 10 more years or something.
Yeah, very few people get that tip in life saying you will live only this long, so make it count. And all stories I've heard definitely say that he did make it count.
You bet.
One of the names that I noticed that you wrestled, and how can I never bring this man up, Andre the Giant. How was he to wrestle?
Wow. Yeah, I wrestled Andre maybe 2-3 times, and it was television. And I remember the first time, which is another match I do have on my website from Allentown. You have to take into consideration how big this guy is, being 450 pounds or whatever he was. And, my hand can fit inside the palm of his hand, right? So, here I am stepping into the ring, and I said, something, I got to make myself look as good as possible. And I attacked him from the beginning in that match where he was signing autographs, and I just went to work on him. Boom, boom, I'm punching and kicking and this and that and everything. And then he comes back with a headbutt and gives me a suplex, and then just does that big leap as if he's leaping across your chest. And let me tell you something. The guy hardly touched me that whole match. That's how professional Andre was. And, of course, Andre's had many years of experience already. And was I nervous at the time? Oh, yeah. But, I had to trust in who I was working with. And I did trust Andre.
It was one of those things, actually, that we ended up, because I've got a podcast with Don Muraco, and he mentioned the Executioners. And I think he got your name mixed up with, it would have been Killer Kowalski, in fact, who teamed up with John Studd. And I was thinking, there's the old, what Don thinks is a fallacy, that Andre hated John Studd, despite the fact they seem to work together for years. Did you ever notice anything between them as far as not getting along, or is that made up?
I've never seen anything, and in fact, I can go on to other people. I've never seen any real hatred except for Adrian Adonis and Dan Spivey.
Yeah,
that was about the only thing. But no, as far as Don and Andre, I've never ever saw anything that would lead me to any issues against him.
So I've always got to ask: did you ever spend any time with Andre outside of the ring, maybe in a restaurant or a bar?
Well, I can tell you this. No, I can't ever remember, but I can say one night, and I can remember the town exactly, Salisbury, Maryland, where we would occasionally do a show. And I got there early that night. So I'm sitting in the dressing room, and I was the first one there, and I was still dressed. And I see a young kid bringing in a case of bottles. And he puts them over by the locker, opens them up, and I'm saying, wow, 6, 7, or 8 bottles of champagne. I said, Andre must be here. And sure enough, here comes Andre coming in there with his suit, jacket on. And, how you doing, boss? And that's what he called everybody boss, And he'd sit down, and we'd start talking, and then here he goes. He's grabbing a bottle, rips that cork right off, and drinks it down like it was a shot glass. But that was my only remembrance of Andre and his drinking binges.
Do you know what? That sort of makes sense now, because in the Andre documentary, they talk about him having the loudest farts of all time. And if you're having a bottle of champagne every 10 minutes, that might explain it.
Yes, and I'm sure they weren't tiny bubbles.
Andre was a big drinker. Andre, if he liked you, he would treat you well. If he didn't like you, he would not speak to you. He won't even talk to you. He liked me. He had me drive him around for quite some time, maybe 2 months or a month, because Tim White took the job over. And he says, boss, where you live? I said, I'm right here from Brooklyn, Andre. Your parents still there? My father passed. My mother still lives there. And take me. That's what he said. So I called my mother up. And I think it was Andre had those big white phones, because there was no cell phones back then. I said, listen, I'm bringing a wrestler by the house. He goes, who? I says, you won't know him, just some guy that just started. So I pull up to the house. My mother, it's a 2nd-story house. My mother's looking out the top window. She sees me. I come out of the driver's seat. Then all of a sudden, the passenger seat opens, and this big monster comes out. All I hear is my mother is, oh, my God. The whole neighborhood went. He was as big as Hulk Hogan in his prime back then, and he was the nicest guy. I went to his restaurant in Montreal, and I said, "This is great, Andre. This is really going to be a success, boss. Money in the booze, not the food." He was just that kind of. And you know what he did for me one time?
No.
I was in a battle royal, and he threw me in for a short foot. You know, like you just throw you in, put his foot up. I take the bump. He dives on me. I said, "Holy shit, he's going to kill me." Every wrestler dove on top of him, but he kept his elbows protecting me, and he whispered in my ear, "Boss, I have you." And he took care of me. The other guys were trying to hurt me. You know, not hurt me to kill me, but it would have killed me. If they put all that legitimate weight on me, I would never been able to breathe. But Andre saved me there. He really did.
Do you remember any of the people who he wasn't so charitable and kind to in the ring?
Oh, but if I say that, that's going to be bad blood. But a lot of the young boys, you know, back then that were cocky. He didn't like loudmouths. Like I don't think he was crazy. I don't know. I don't even want to say it because in the interview to him, you're going to say, "Oh, I heard you didn't like this person. Andre didn't like you." You know, I put that in the negatory state.
Okay. Well, I know a couple of names like I think Iron Sheik he sat on and stuff like that. I only know that name.
He didn't like drugs.
No.
He didn't like. And Sheik, "Oh baby, I took A to Z, everything."
I'm capitalizing on the wild popularity of a very brief video I did with Diamond Dallas Page about the real heights of professional wrestlers. So I thought I'd give a few, and you tell me what height you believe they were. Flat, no shoes on the ground. Andre the Giant.
He's a guy that tall. You don't have anything to gauge with other than a picture. So he's 7'4", maybe more, and he's just unbelievably huge next to, because his girth is like this. Can you see that? You know. I mean, you know, you couldn't reach around him. Let me say that. You could not reach around him.
You never tried to hug him?
No, you couldn't. I mean, he's just so big. But he's very, very, very tall.
Yeah. I've heard everything from 7'4" down to 6'11". So everybody's
got a lot taller. Yeah, he's a lot taller, 6'11".